Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker and the host of this Daisy Jones and the Six Rewatch podcast. When I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut, which is another way to say carpe diem. It's all about going after the things you want in life. And something I wanted to do this year was rewatch the show Daisy Jones and the Six, and this time talk about it with other people. So here we are. We're talking about Daisy Jones and the Six. We're really far into the show now. We're covering episode 8 today, and given that there are only 10 episodes in this limited series, that's most of the way through the show, but we've gotten some important stuff ahead. Actually, I will say that if I'm doing a rewatch, I'll, on a regular basis, just go back to 8, 9, and 10. That tends to be the sweet spot for me. I'll roll through them really quick. But what I loved about doing all of the episodes up until this point is that now that I know 8, 9, and 10 so well, I feel like I really am picking out how important the first 7 episodes were in terms of setup, especially the first few. A lot of stuff that's like deep character psychology stuff is paying off now that was set up at the beginning of the series. So this is where it gets really fun, and I hope you'll join me today to talk about episode 8, track 8, which is called Looks Like We Made It. This one originally aired March 17th, 2023. It was written for television by, so sorry if I mispronounce your names, Jihan Crowther and Liz Coe. And this was directed by Nzinga Stewart, who also did episode 6, but then there was this gap because we spent episode 7 in another country. So we're back to Nzinga Stewart now. And here's the description, the somewhat lengthy summary that I think these have been pretty good so far. So for this one, Daisy, with Nikki in tow, reunites with the Six in time for the Aurora tour. She and Billy are still angry at each other over the Rolling Stone article. The tour, managed by Rod Reyes, is so successful that it is expanded. Eddie talks to Camilla about their night together, but she doesn't want to be unfaithful again. After Eddie and Warren tease Graham for not sleeping with groupies, Karen reveals her and Graham's relationship. As the tour continues, Daisy and Nikki increasingly abuse drugs. Billy and Nikki come to blows over the situation. An intoxicated Daisy injures herself on stage, but soldiers on and sings Look at Us Now a cappella. Billy, who has refused to play the song on tour, storms off. Later that night, Billy and Rod find Daisy overdosed in her hotel suite. While Rod calls a private doctor, Nikki flees the scene before Daisy slowly regains consciousness in Billy's arms. I mean, does she really regain consciousness? A little bit, sort of, for a moment. Just like, when you end the episode, you don't really know what's happening here. So I feel like the ending of this summary is maybe a little more optimistic than that. But that is the summary nonetheless. And I'm pretty excited to get into the scene-by-scene breakdown on this one. So let's just jump into that. So actually, we start with opening credits. Now, if you've been playing the home version of this game, I keep mentioning when we go straight to opening credits or when we've had a cold open. For Nzinga's first episode that she did, episode 6, we had a cold open, where there was a scene before the credits. And it was the only time so far that that's happened. And I don't believe it's the only time it happens in the show, but it doesn't happen here. I'm not sure what made the decision between when it does happen and when it doesn't. I did think it was appropriate in episode 6. But for this one, we just go straight to the opening credits. And then we're going to start with our first scene. Actually, we're going to be looking through a video camera. We're getting Camilla's footage. So Camilla is, in theory, taking the video, and we're hearing her voice. So we're looking at a billboard for Daisy Jones and the Six's Aurora tour, and it's the picture of Daisy and Billy that Camilla took. And on like sort of the bottom corner, it says, "Coming to a city near you this winter." And we hear Camilla's voice as she's looking at this billboard, which, as much as Billy should be proud of this, so should Camilla, because this is her photo. Camilla gasps. She's like, "Look, Jules, it's Daddy!" And Julia and Billy are laughing. And Camilla says, "It's so exciting, coming to a city near you this winter." And she zooms the camera in so that we can see those words very clearly, make sure we haven't missed that. So this tour is being marketed, except Daisy's not back. So we're going to get the interview versions of our characters weighing in on this. Interview Karen calls BS on it. She says, "Except it wasn't true." Interview Graham says, "I mean, there was still no trace of her anywhere." Interview Karen says, "Didn't show up for mixing, rehearsals." Interview Warren says, well, some of us couldn't help but wonder if she was gone for good. And interview Eddie says, I think one of us was probably hoping for that. Guess which one that was? Eddie is figuring probably Billy's hoping that. I mean, look, I'm sure everybody in the band has seen the Rolling Stone article and is very aware why Daisy has not come back. She's probably not feeling good about the article, and I'm guessing not a single person. Well, look, not a single person from the band has been able to reach out to her, even if they wanted to. So there's that. We are then going to see, we're going to cut to the next scene. Billy is walking through this. It's a really interesting choice here. Actually, these first two scenes are like we're hearing characters before we're seeing who we're looking at. So in this case, the camera's inside the studio, looking through the window and watching Billy walk through the hallway. And we can hear chattering from inside the studio. So some of the band is in the studio right now watching Billy walk by the window. And Billy enters and his eyes become fixed on something in the room. Like, uh-oh, moment of truth is happening. It's kind of we are going to see later in this episode his fixation look. This is more of a blank look. Like, I'm just going to be just a clear palette. Like, I'm not going to put any emotion into this because I don't want to sway whatever's about to happen here. The camera rotates from looking at Billy to show us the band in the studio, and Daisy is standing in there, confident as the day she was born. No, that doesn't feel like it. That's not an expression. She's got her boots. She's got a big coat with big sleeves on. She's ready to, I don't know, she's ready to duke it out probably. She's got a piece of paper in her hand, probably the set list. Her arms are folded. She's got a very wide stance. She's got a power stance happening here. She's staring Billy down. And Warren, to cut the tension, gives a very casual ta-da gesture to her, like, this is it. This is Daisy. Like, it's not an excited ta-da. It's like and so begins round 7 sort of thing. Interview Billy says, I was just trying to hold this thing together. Was he? Yes and no. He's the one who sort of destroyed it. Well, Daisy and him, they both were destroying each other through Jonah Berg's article. But this I was trying to hold this thing together take is a little reductive. Might be missing a detail or two. And then we go back to 70s Billy. He says into his mic as he's getting ready. He's not looking at anybody when he says this. He says, let's run through Aurora with that intro we were kicking around. Hey, it's just an instruction. Let's go do it. And Daisy says, so you want to start with a set with Aurora? He says, yeah, that's what we decided. Yeah. She's got a little frown like, cool. Interesting. She's looking at the paper. Billy turns to Warren. He says, Warren, when you're ready. Warren goes, 1. And Daisy interrupts. She's not going to let Warren count all the way here. Daisy interrupts, and Warren and Graham are going to look at each other like, oh no, here we go. Okay. She says, and these are the songs that you want to sing. We get a wider shot now so we can see the whole band. Billy pauses. He touches his face like, oh, we're going to see a lot of people doing, these just like touching of the face gestures whenever things get awkward in this episode. Everybody's looking at Daisy now. Billy says, that's right. Yeah, these are the songs we're singing. Daisy says, no regret me, no look at us now. Billy says, well, if you wanted to weigh in, the time for that was weeks ago when we first started rehearsing. And what I really enjoy about Sam Claflin's choice here is that he's mimicking Daisy's big move for all of their early episodes where they were first meeting each other. He says it with a smile. If you wanted to weigh in, the time for that was weeks ago when we first started rehearsing it. If it works for Daisy, gosh darn it, maybe it'll work for him. Daisy smiles back with her gum showing, because we need to introduce the gum. It's Chekhov's gum. I don't know. I try that was like a really close pun, right? Her gum's showing. Karen's like, do you guys need a minute? Billy says, he's annoyed. He says, no. Warren, count us in. Daisy says, yes, actually we do. She spits Chekhov's gum into the set list, just crumples up the paper and leaves. Billy takes off his guitar. He's getting a little miffed. He follows her out, and then we're going to go outside the studio into the parking lot area. We watch Daisy storm out, arms swinging, because that's what happens. They're swinging sideways when you got those big sleeves. And Billy follows. He says, "What the hell's your problem?" Daisy says, "You called me icing." She says, "You said I was a head case to Rolling Stone magazine." Billy says, "You told a journalist about me missing the birth of my daughter." I mean, they get right into it, right? At least what I do enjoy about these two, and frankly, you just like, why do this in a show when you've only got 3 episodes left and a lot of story still to tell? But they don't spend really any amount of time with pleasantries and just pretending it's all okay. They just get right to the heart of it. These two are not going to just sugarcoat anything. And they both have a case to be made here. Neither one of them was happy with the very unflattering depiction they gave of each other in the Rolling Stone magazine article. So Billy says, "You told a journalist about me missing the birth of my daughter." Daisy yells, "So what?" Billy yells, "I told you that in confidence, Daisy, because I trusted you." She says, with more of a sneer, like maybe not as loud a tone, she says, "Don't act like you didn't effing do anything." Billy says, "What does that mean?" Daisy says, "Talent like Daisy's is wasted on somebody like Daisy. That's what you said. You made me look weak. You made me look like I need you." Billy says, "So we both told the truth then." He walks back inside, and she stays in the parking lot for a moment and sighs. They're gonna go back in here into the studio in a moment, but I wanted to stop down on this for a second because I think it's really interesting what Daisy is picking out to complain about. Um, and what she isn't. Because if you remember, I went back through and read everything that we were seeing from the article in the last episode. And there was a lot of really unflattering stuff about how Daisy was difficult to work with, about, how she was dealing with addiction, really unflattering depiction of her inability to be on time, her selfishness. There were a lot of character attacks that were made. And what she's picking out here, so icing, head case, those are 2 words that she says to Billy. But when she gets a chance to like give a full line, she says, "Talent like Daisy's is wasted on somebody like Daisy." And it feels like the least specific character attack that's made in the article. So I do think it's interesting that she fixates on that particular one, or at least that's what she brings up to him here. But when she gives her reasoning behind that, she says, "You made me look weak. You made me look like I need you." Um, like, look, like in her mind, uh, the band needs her, but from what she's reading from this article, she needs Billy and the band more. Um, and I'm not sure that's so different from what Karen's argument has been with Graham, actually, along the way here. Like, I don't want to just be seen as the girlfriend in the band. I want people to acknowledge my hard work and my musical abilities. And I guess in a way, Daisy is saying the same thing here. Um, except the article was loaded with, again, so many character attacks that it is interesting that she focuses on this one here. Okay, so we go back inside the studio. Band's getting ready to play. Billy's like, "It's going to be a long tour, so if you'd prefer to sit this one out, please be my guest." Daisy says, "There's no tour without me, you dumb son of a bitch." To the band, she says, "We're playing Regret Me." Billy concedes reluctantly. He says, "Fine." Daisy's eyes are forward. She won that one. She's going to keep going. She says, "And look at us now." And he says, "No." She says, "Yes." He says sternly, "I said no, Daisy." She stares at him. And he says, "Warren, count us in for the love of effing God." Nikki enters at this point. It's quite the conversation to walk into. He's like, "What's all this?" Nikki says to Daisy, "What did I miss?" He smiles at her calmly. The picture of calm, the picture of count to 5, Daisy. And Daisy is beaming to see him. It totally shifted the energy in the room. We're going to get the opening notes of the song "The Ballroom Blitz" by Sweet as a needle drop. And the band is looking at Nikki in confusion. I love that Eddie says, "Who the F is this guy?" And you know what? At one point, Daisy was basically saying the same thing about Eddie. So it must be nice for Eddie to be able to turn that onto somebody else now. Daisy turns to Eddie. She says, "Everybody, this is Nikki." We're going to see Daisy, Billy, and Karen in this shot. She turns back to Nikki. She says, "My husband." And she smiles at him. Nikki says, "Hi to everybody." And this is even more confusing than if she hadn't explained who Nikki was. So we're going to see Warren look at Graham. We're going to see Billy look at Daisy, like waiting for her to be like kidding. And then he realizes, no, she's serious. And then I love it. I love the eye acting here. Like Billy's okay. Like maybe I should give this guy a second look. He's a factor now. Definitely catches Billy off guard a lot. Of all the things, I think it does give Daisy some amount of an upper hand here that she came like everybody else, she could have predicted exactly what she was going to find in this room and she would have been correct. But nobody could have predicted what she was going to enter the room with. And so in a way, the element of surprise is in her favor. Um so there's that. I think the point that she makes earlier in this, "There's no tour without me, you dumb son of a bitch," is once again echoing the thing that she had said outside of, like, "You made me look weak, you made me look like I needed you." And now she's saying, "No, you need me." She's sort of reasserting her importance, her dominance. And, she gets Billy to back down on playing one of the songs. Okay. So we're going to get the drum beats continuing for the needle drop we started to play. We're going to see track 8. Looks like we made it come up on screen. And now we're going to go into a conference room. Camera starts sort of pointed up towards the ceiling. It pans down, and we're going to see Billy and Daisy on either side of a conference table. Not the long ends, but they're able to be in frame together. I don't know if it was scripted this way or if this was a discovery that they made in the room, but Billy is resting his head into his hand, but has a very specific choice that his middle finger is raised, and he is resting his head on his middle finger for almost the entire scene. And it feels like a passive aggressive, "Oh no, this is the position I'm comfortable in," sort of a thing. "Oh, is it just so happens that my middle finger is up the whole time?" Whatever. I get it feels like it's intentional from him, but can be explained as not being intentional. So I really loved this choice. Um, so okay, Billy's smoking, and then we're going to start seeing they're working things out with their tour manager about the details they want to negotiate. Daisy says it's just more practical with the costume changes. Billy says, "Or you could wear less costumes." Daisy says a private dressing room isn't that much to ask for. Billy says, "Then I want a separate green room." She says, "For what?" He says, "For those of us who aren't going to use before every show, Daisy." She says, "That's you. So you want a private green room just for you." Billy gestures to somebody we haven't seen yet, like a very like, "Yeah, that's what I want" sort of gesture. And then we look and we find out it's Rod. Rod's back. Timothy Oliphant. I'm happy when I get a scene with Timothy Oliphant and Sam Claflin in the same frame. And we're going to see Rod also smoking here. I want to stop here for a moment, even though there is quite a bit more negotiation that happens. And I want to get to Rod's reaction. But the first thing I need to ask, look, I don't know much about fashion. I think I've said it before. I'll say it again. Um, Daisy says it's more practical with the costume changes for her to have a private dressing room. Here's what I want to ask you. Does she ever change costumes in any of these shows? And this is not meant to be it's a small detail, but we're going to see. I know it's hard to tell in this episode because we're cutting between a bunch of different concerts and she's wearing different outfits in them. But in episode 10, for those of you who do know the show, we're going to see most of that final concert. And I think she's wearing the same thing the whole time. No? Am I misremembering that? Does she ever change costumes during the show? And if so, what is she negotiating here? And is this just a line that they just didn't have the wardrobe budget, or I don't know, or maybe she was changing costumes the whole time and I'm just an idiot. So I don't know, you tell me. But this line always confused me because I feel like that's not matching what I'm actually seeing in terms of the shows that are portrayed to us. So, okay. Billy also wants a private green room just for him. Rod, we see him for the first time in this scene. He's just open mouthed. He's looking between them. He's smoking. Less is more for Timothy Oliphant here. And he does an amazing job with the comedic timing. We're going to see interview Rod saying, managing the Six had somehow become the hottest gig in town. Billy never forgot what I'd done for him back in 71. So when he called me up, I jumped at the chance. Back to the scene. Daisy says, I don't know if you heard, but I'm married now. Billy smiles. Like this was a tactic the whole time. That's the kind of smile he's giving here. She says, so I'd like a suite for all these overnights. Billy says, well, I'm married too. Daisy says, but your wife's not coming on tour. Billy says, well, not the whole time, but I'm sorry. If she gets a suite, I get a suite too. Daisy quickly jumps in on a separate floor. Billy says, even better. Rod, kidding, says, why not get separate buses while you're at it? Daisy and Billy at the same time, overlapping lines. Daisy says, is that possible? Billy says, can we do that? Unfortunately, Rod walked himself into that one. Rod is wide-eyed. He's looking between them. Interview Rod's like, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Yeah, seemed like a big opportunity to take. So Rod from 76 explains to them in this conference room, you have one album. This is the kind of shit you ask for when you're Crosby, Stills, and Nash, okay? There's no way the label's going to sign off on any of this. Interview Rod chuckles. He says they said yes to everything. Oh my goodness. Timothy Oliphant. In every episode, he's just such a presence on screen. Perfect line deliveries. Such a fun breath of fresh air. You know, a really interesting element to add to this scene because it's probably very tense in this room. And he is the person who has to balance between these two very big personalities who are at war with each other. And everything that Rod does somehow keeps it light, even though for us, even though for them, they don't find him funny. Okay, we're going to see two buses parked. So I guess they did, in fact, say yes to everything the studio did, or the label did. We're going to see Daisy Jones' bus wrap on them. The camera is pulling along the buses to the front of the line. And we're going to get a title card that says December 1976. And the bus, I don't know what you call this, but you know at the front top of the bus where it tells you like what the destination of the bus is? I don't know what the word for that is, but it's been set to say, we love Daisy at the top. Billy says, we love Billy. So this first one in line is Daisy's. The band is saying their goodbyes out front. We're going to get a goodbye between Karen and Camilla. They hug. We're going to get, and then Karen gets onto Daisy's bus. The camera stays with Camilla, who looks up at Daisy on her bus. She's sitting next to Nikki. Daisy's got the window seat. Camilla waves. Daisy sort of waves back. It's more just like a raise of the hand. She doesn't put all the effort in to wave at her. She just gives it one of these because you're affiliated with Billy is what's happening. Warren runs up. He's going to hug Camilla. She's going to say ciao hermosa, or no, he says ciao hermosa, and she says ciao fuerte, Spanish, beautiful and strong. She says be well in Spanish. He says be safe in English. He gets on Daisy's bus. So far, everybody's getting on Daisy's bus. Camilla's going to keep walking. The camera's still following her. She's walking. She's got like am I right in thinking, is this a velvet, like a red velvet outfit? And then she passes Eddie, who's wearing like a red velvet jacket. That's what it looked like to me. So they're kind of color coordinated, which I suppose links them in my mind back to the fact that they've had an affair with each other in a previous episode. So she passes Eddie very shyly, doesn't want to start a conversation with him. He wants to greet her, but she just keeps walking. And he gets on Daisy's bus. Camilla's going to meet up with Graham and Julia and Billy. Graham's currently saying goodbye to Julia. He says, take care of your mom, okay? Camilla says, oh, Julia gets so many Graham hugs. Can I get a Graham hug? So he hugs Camilla. Camilla asks Graham to take care of Billy. Billy is lifting Julia to say goodbye to her. Graham's going to say goodbye. He's going to get on Billy's bus. And then Billy says to Julia, you're going to miss me. Camilla tells her daughter to say goodbye. Billy says, you sure you don't want to come? Because he's got a suite for her now. Camilla takes Julia. She says, oh, yeah, it'd be so fun with a 2.5-year-old. They say they're going to miss each other. They kiss, and they're kind of holding things up. Rod, he says, Billy, and you're like, hey, man, like, I gotta go. Billy, while kissing Camilla, holds up a finger, like, just give me a minute. Like, we've waited for Daisy. We can wait for me too. And so Rod's like, come on, got to get this show on the road. Literally, it's an actual thing. Camilla tells him to go be a rock star, and he goes and he gets on his bus, and the bus pulls away. All right, so what's going to happen on this tour? Well, Interview Warren tells us that night one was in Albuquerque. We're going to get Interview Rod explaining why, and it makes sense. He says you don't start in New York or LA where the crowd is nothing but critics in suits. You want to start small, off market, where you can get your sea legs under you, work out the kinks. I've heard the same thing about a book tour. So seems like sound logic that has been used before. So we're going to see them at a sound check in Albuquerque. We're hearing microphone feedback as the band is on stage, just working it out. Daisy's walking around. She's jumping as she's singing lyrics. Boy, it would kill you to try. The audio guy's like, can you do that phrase again? I'm getting some feedback. Billy says to Daisy, maybe stop moving around so much. I mean, the mic gets shaky with you flittering around. Daisy gestures to the engineer. She says, so let's fix it. Billy says, well, how are they supposed to light you if you can't stand still? Daisy calls to a guy bringing lighting equipment through he's just, it's like so convenient, the timing. A guy bringing a huge piece of lighting equipment through just as Billy's like, well, how are they going to light you? She says, you with the lighting equipment. Can you light me if I'm moving around? Guy's like, I mean, yeah, whatever you guys want. Billy's face here, perfect. He's just thwarted again. Daisy walks away. She says, wonderful, let's run through the song. Billy tilts his head back. He's like, yeah, sure. The drums start for the river. I mean, look, first of all, Billy, I'm sure, is well aware that he can't keep Daisy down. He can't put Daisy in a corner, you know? It's not going to happen. But also, it's like a weird thing to even ask. I don't know, maybe it's nowadays, how often do we see like elaborate shows with backup dancers and choreography and like so much happening on stage, or boy bands with multiple members of the band all doing choreography, you know, like surely though in the 70s people didn't just stand fixed in place all the time. I'm sure there was there was precedent for people to do what Daisy's doing here. So I think Billy even suggesting that she just stand where she is, never going to happen, and probably isn't even exactly the industry standard, I would think. But I don't know. He wouldn't it just be easier if she played nice? I mean, it sort of sucks the fun out of the show, but whatever. Okay, so the drums start for the river. Interview Karen says, if I'm being honest, we were pretty sure Albuquerque would be a disaster. We're going to see the band on stage grooving out to the river. They're all getting into it. Interview Karen says, but it was fantastic. We're going to see, you know, Daisy singing hands in the hair, you know, shaking her head. If I follow you to the river. A lot of call and response stuff that we're getting in this episode. I think that's a real strength that we're able to do when we get these two on stage singing together, because when we've seen them working lyrics out, a lot of times, you know, they were working out a lyric and then they were bringing it together, but we weren't seeing this performance quality of the way that the call and the response would influence the mood of the song. So I love that they really play with that in this episode, and they give us so much of that in the edit. Okay, so we're getting If I Follow You to the River. Daisy saying, and the shadow calling towards you. She's got One thing I noticed about Daisy, look, I'm not going to try to really explain Daisy's costumes in this whole episode because my language isn't great. I mean, she's got like the bra and the shawl look. She does a lot of shawls. It works really well for the stage. It works really well with the lighting, and it also works probably really well with the fact that you sweat a ton when you're up on stage. So it seems like she's got fairly like kind of practical choices, about as practical as it could be, I suppose. But one of the things that I noticed is that earlier in the episode, she's using more like earthy tones um, and there's a distinct point when we get into a sequence of concerts where she's just got black, and there's a progression into that. So I did notice that like color wise, as she is taking more and more drugs, and as she's getting like further and further out of her mind, her clothing is becoming darker on stage. We're gonna get a guitar riff. We're seeing everybody chime in. Oh, and then Daisy's "I Want You There." Billy, "I Follow You to the River." Okay. We're gonna see Daisy belting out on the shadow to the river, "Your affection is a promise you couldn't keep." We are going to see a couple shots early in these concert sequences in this episode, like this one, where we're looking over the whole audience from sort of further back in the audience, and we see Daisy and Billy and the whole band on stage, but much smaller. And I think, shots like that, we have so many concert scenes and so many different concerts in this episode that they need to feel distinct from each other. And so they're trying to pull out all the stops to give us different angles, different things to look at. They want to make it because really they weren't like, for filming this, it's not like they were working with completely different venues every time they had a concert. Like they had to take, one or two spaces and dress them up. And shoot them differently. So it felt like we were in different cities while also feeling like their show was the same, or it was consistent from place to place. Okay, so we're going to see in this further away shot, then we're going to see Daisy come closer to sing nearer to Billy, but there's still distance between them. We've got Rod dancing in the wings. We've got Nikki smiling because he's getting a chance to see Daisy doing her thing. The song ends. Daisy's going to put her head on Billy's shoulder. It's like a professional moment of connection that is professional for Daisy, and I don't know what Billy thinks it is, but interview Daisy says, "We had to work together. We didn't have to like each other, and we didn't." Billy shouts out to the crowd, "Thank you, Albuquerque." Daisy takes her head off his shoulder. She walks away. She walks out to the wings. She's walking with purpose, smiling at Nikki. She jumps into his arms, straddling him. I was like, thank goodness I'm off that stage now. She is in the loving embrace of her husband. Billy gives his guitar to a stagehand and he's walking off stage too, but then he sees Daisy and Nikki in this position, her straddling him hugging her and kissing her. And his not only does his smile fade, his walk slows. I mean, look, uh, he did a really hurtful thing, a very public thing. So did she, but he beat her in the end. He got the last word. He got his words into that article in Rolling Stone magazine. But here and they've been fighting and there's been tension and she feels angry and betrayed and hurt by him. But then here she is, like having this very public display of affection with Nikki, and Billy can't really stomach it. And it changes his day and his mood. So that'll tell you real quick what Billy's feeling like about Daisy and about the Daisy and Nikki relationship. All right, we're going to get an overhead shot of a rotary phone. Shout out to rotary phones. Had a bunch of those in my house when I was growing up. The phone rings. It's at Camilla and Billy's house. Camilla is in bed with Julia, has been for a while. She picks up the phone. She says, "Hello," like she's just barely awake. Billy says, "How's my little girl? Did she miss me?" He's calling in. He's wearing sweats. He's calling from a payphone in the street. Camilla's like, "Billy, it's been like 2 days." Billy says, "Can you put her on?" Camilla inhales. She says, It's the middle of the night. She's been asleep for hours. You can listen to her dream, okay? And she puts just the receiver to Julia's mouth, but keeps the part where you hear away from her ear. Billy says, "Hey, baby, it's Daddy." He's looking a little bit sad as Camilla says, "Well, I'm going to go back to bed. I'll call you tomorrow. I love you." And I think I might actually continue with the next part first. Then we see the party bus, like the difference of the worlds between Billy's experience and Daisy's and everybody else's experience, because we know from who got on which bus earlier in the goodbye scene, we know that Graham travels with Billy, but we are going to see him on the party bus here. So we get a nice close-up shot of some Pabst Blue Ribbon beer. We can see Daisy and Graham snorting cocaine. I think we're hearing a song called Getting It On by the Affection Collection. I can't be 100% sure of that, but that is a song that I've heard credited here, or seen credited here. I think it's well curated. Um, Daisy is pulling off Graham's glasses. Graham's sitting and dancing and pointing over at Karen. Karen, and I love this. I love this look. Karen is dancing in this. Okay, look. We know I don't notice fashion, but I notice this black. Is it a cat suit? Is it like a one piece? I don't know. Suki Waterhouse, whoever put this black number on Karen, I mean, give this person a raise. Suki Waterhouse probably looks good in just about anything, but my goodness, she looks so beautiful in this. Um, so she's dancing, Nikki's sitting back and he's partying, and then we see Eddie and Karen sort of dancing like back to back. Karen's never looked cooler than she looks in that moment. Then we're going to see again Billy on his bus, but we can hear the party happening on the other bus, so can he. He puts on his sweats. The buses are parked in front of a venue. There's one night only posters like all over that there's like a little area where they can put posters. All of them are of Daisy Jones and the Six, one night only. Interview Billy says this time is going to be different. Um, so I mean, it really goes to show you the difference between the worlds here. First of all, I mean, yeah, no way Billy isn't thinking about what happened on the last tour that he was on. And these negotiations he's been making have certainly been with the mindset of trying to stay sober, also with the mindset of like trying not to have less than what Daisy has. So that's all a factor for him. These It's this really interesting balance of all these factors for him. Like he wants separation from Daisy, he wants equality with Daisy in terms of what's being offered to Billy, and he wants to not be tempted so much. Um, so he spends a lot of time alone because even Graham, the person who's traveling with him during the day, is on the party bus at night. So, um, and is probably then gonna go back and stay on the bus with Billy. And Billy has been dealing with that. It's not like people haven't ever been drinking around him or doing drugs around him. They certainly have been. That has been a factor. But this is constant. And the association of knowing how off the rails he went on the last tour, like there's probably a deep psychological element that's happening here for him. So he's doing what he can to like stay within the rules. And even, his intent of like getting out and even calling Camilla in the middle of the night, because remember at the first tour we saw that sequence. Yeah, sure, he called her the first time she picked up, and then after a while their ability to connect on the phone was like not there. So I think they probably came up with the plan around how they were going to. She says, I'll call you tomorrow, like they have a plan around how they're going to stay in communication, and he's trying to stick to it. Doesn't mean that I don't still notice the way his face dropped and his gait slowed when he saw Daisy jump into Nikki's arms, though. But he's keeping within the rules. And I guess that's the important thing. Okay, so We're going to hear the song Aurora start playing. And the on the air sign lights up because Billy and Daisy are going to be talking to a bunch of radio shows. And so Billy's voice says, "This is Billy Dunn." Daisy's voice says, "And I'm Daisy Jones." We see her hogging the mic. She says, "And you're listening to KAKC AM Radio Tulsa." And then we're going to hear very quickly that they're going to different cities. Billy's in a different studio, says KBOX Dallas. Daisy says in a different studio, The Rock of Fort Worth. Uh, and then Billy jumps in KFJZ. So right there, three different cities happened on this tour, which is kind of a cool way to show us the passage of time and the passage of place. Daisy at this Rock of Fort Worth station, Daisy kind of like rolls her eyes when Billy speaks. Her it's an interesting, is it a shirt or a sweater or I don't even know what she's wearing here, but the sleeves almost remind me of a kimono. Um, Billy's like, "Well, that was great, Mike. Thank you." Daisy's like, "Ugh, this guy." Mike says, "Thanks, appreciate it." And Daisy just leaves. I was like, "Thanks for having us." Billy keeping it professional and polite. Daisy's just like, "I can't be around you." Okay, we're going to see the buses roll up to a big crowd on the sidewalk. Daisy and Nikki are smiling. Wow, like people are really coming out for this tour. All the band's looking out the window. We hear Boston's More Than a Feeling. Really well chosen song for this moment, I think. Daisy's like, "Oh my God, like all these people out there." Nikki says, "Tributes to the Temple of Daisy Jones." Daisy smiles. We hear I looked out this morning and the sun was gone. We hear Interview Rod tell us by Christmas they had the #3 song in the country and the #9 song in the country. We're going to see Billy and Graham smiling out their window. Rod says, "We booked them on Bandstand Midnight Special. There were rumors about Saturday Night Live." We're seeing Billy wave at the crowd. Go back to Interview Rod. He says, "All the shows were selling out, new dates being added all the time." And we're going to see the We Love Billy bus rolling to a stop. The band gets out. They're going to greet their fans. A woman full on kisses Eddie. Some woman comes up and just like shows him her chest, and he's just like signing up top. Uh, Interview Rod's like, "It was every band's dream come true." Daisy is sort of touching fans' hands as she walks through. Warren has to pull Eddie away from the woman that's kissing him. Billy's touching hands with fans. And then somebody tries to give him drugs. And Rod sees that. He's eagle-eyed, that Rod. He knows exactly what to watch out for on this tour. Rod is going to grab those drugs instead. Interview Rod just shakes his head like these are the cats he has to herd, okay? And we're hearing the lyrics of the song More Than a Feeling. I begin dreaming, more than a feeling, till I see Marianne walk away. I mean, that's the least relevant lyric, I think, of the song in terms of having it be so literal. But the More Than a Feeling, I begin dreaming, that definitely feels appropriate for this. And maybe there's something in the Billy Daisy dynamic about till I see Marianne walk away, maybe. We're going to get a shot of a big office building in LA, and we pan down to see Teddy and Don walking out of it. Don representing the label, of course. Teddy says, "Where are we going, Don?" And Don says, "There's something I want you to see." He's going to walk him up to a car that's parked out front. He says, 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds. Top speed about 165. You know who else drives one of these? 007 himself. Teddy's like, "Pretty nice car." Don's like, "Do you like it?" Teddy says, "What's not to like?" Don says, "Good, because she's yours." Teddy looks at him with just a little bit of confusion. Don says, "We've had some hits before, you and I, but these numbers, Teddy, the phone's been ringing off the hook. Big names, heroes of mine, some of them. What's it going to take for you to stay in-house?" Teddy chuckles. He says, "Well, a lot more than a Ferrari 308, but you already knew that, didn't you?" Hence the little bit of confusion we saw from him earlier. You don't want to make it seem like, "Oh, this is the car of my dreams. Thank you, Don," because then you don't get more stuff. Teddy needs to play it real cool here with this Ferrari 308. Don does now. He knows now. Okay. He needs to be ready with more stuff. Don throws the keys up. Teddy is going to catch him. He says, "Here, don't drive her too fast. We've got work to do." Okay. We're going to get a pre-lap of Kill You to Try. And we're going to see, again, we're we're looking for all these different ways of making it feel like we're not at one long version of the same concert. So we're trying to give it different angles, different camera angles, different just different ways to show us that we're doing the same thing, but always in different places. So the camera here starts from sort of the top and back of Daisy's head, and it starts looking out into the crowd. Daisy singing, "Show me, I'd blind myself to see it." I really like that lyric. Um, this is very much a call and response sort of a song here. What Billy saying, "What is it? What is it I must do?" He's smiling in Daisy's direction. Daisy says, "If I tell you, promise me you'll mean it." Billy saying, "Let me come home. Let me come home to you." Daisy looking at Billy, "Show me. I'd blind myself to see it." And we're going to keep repeating sort of versions of this for a while. Um, and I think, we'll see every now and then we'll see the band coming in on backup vocals. Daisy, if I tell you, promise me you'll mean it. Let me come home. Let me come home to you from Billy. We're starting to see more like visual connection happening between them. At the point when Billy says, "What is it? What is it I must do?" we are going to see another one of those far away shots of them standing, across. We're looking over the crowd to see them on stage. They're much smaller in that shot. We're going to get some close-ups of different. This is where I really noticed like the mixing of the song here, because we're going to get, as much as this is like we're hearing Daisy's line, then Billy, then Daisy, then Billy, we do start to get these moments where we'll get a close up on the different band members and we'll hear their part just a little bit louder, like we're right up close to them. And we see that with Graham, his guitar part. We see that with Karen on the keyboard. We're going to see that again with Graham and his guitar riff. We're going to get a close up on Warren and the drums. And then we're going to see, as the song progresses, Daisy starts dancing and flapping her arms and jumping in a circle. I mean, my goodness, Riley Keough must have been so dizzy at the end of some of these scenes that they shot, because it's not the only time she does this like jumping in a circle move. There are only so many times you can do that before you get really dizzy. And once you start getting dizzy, it's hard to undizzy yourself. Like, I can't help but think about that, but she's a trooper. Daisy's just having just this abandon, and Nikki from the wings, he's smitten. He's smiling at her. Rod kind of nods at Nikki. We're gonna go back to the party bus. Karen lights a cigarette. Warren says to Nikki, "So your face is like on money and shit?" The band is just sitting in. So this is another thing that I find really interesting. I mean, it's not a big bus, but it's a party bus. They're meant to be people on the bus, and I think they do a pretty good job of making it feel like we are seeing a very alive bus here. There's a sitting area, and in this particular scene, we've got most of the band that we're meant to be watching in this sitting area, and then you've got a couple people sort of standing in sort of like a hallway in the back, going towards the back of the bus. And I do think that we're adding in some chatter sound in post here. But probably there aren't a ton of people actually on this bus, but it feels like it's packed. Okay, so anyway, these guys are pumping Nikki for information. Warren's like, "Your face is on money." Nikki says, "No, no, no, no." And he says, "So you're not really a prince." Uh, you know, I guess that's the go-to question from Americans that Nikki gets. Nikki says, "It's complicated." That's not a no. Uh, he's got lipstick all over his face. I presume that's Daisy's. Grim says, "Well, do you have land or power?" And he says, "Yeah, land." Uh, let's get focused on what we really need to know about here. Warren says, "Do you have a job?" Nikki's just like taking it all in. Nikki says, "I'm a student of life." Warren says, "Oh, a student of life," and all start laughing. And Eddie is making fun of him. He's like, "Look at the student of life." It's partly that they're all inebriated, and partly that uh they're making fun of him to his face. Um Daisy comes forward to Nikki's rescue. Warren's like, yeah, me too, man. I like that. As Daisy pulls Nikki away, it like saves him from the group. Somebody says, bye, Professor. I couldn't quite make out who says that. Um, I mean, so cheeky. Daisy says, hey, F off. Warren calls back to him, do you have a degree? Graham laughs. I mean, they are just making fun of him. And Daisy, and we saw this when we saw Simone and Bernie in the last episode, and they were asking questions of Nikki. Daisy's kind of learning that she has to be a little protective of Nikki in these moments. He has maybe not as much patience for these questions, or he's uncomfortable with them, or he's feels self-conscious about them. But Daisy's learned that this is like a thing where she might need to come rescue him, and so she does. We're going to see Billy on his bus, zipping up his sweats, putting on his running shoes. He's going to go for a run on an empty street at night. Then he gets back on a bus. He watches a movie. I wasn't sure what movie this was. So if anybody recognizes this, let me know what it was. He's tired. He's bored because it's not the party that they're having next door. That's for sure. We're going to go back to the bus because we need to get more Rod. I want more Rod. I don't have enough Rod yet. We close up on Rod. The camera's going to be pulling back through this whole scene. Rod says, you crazy? That's like having a favorite kid. I dig it all, man. Doo-wop, boogie-woogie, rockabilly, country western, gospel, honky-tonk, big band, bebop, swing, jazz, folk soul, you name it, I can dig it. Music is my life. Hell, why else would I do a job like this? I love it so much I even put up with the effing musicians. And through that whole, it would be a short monologue, but I guess it's maybe a monologue. We start close on him, we're pulling back, and the further back we pull, the more we see that the band, other than Billy, they are hanging on Rod's every word. When Rod makes his point about the musicians, they all start laughing. They are just really leaning in and listening to him, which I think both works for the shot. And I also think Rod probably doesn't have a lot of these moments where he just like lets his hair down with the band. Seems like, especially for some dialogue we get later, he's kind of careful about like getting really personal with his own stuff with the band, but here he is partying with them. And I think it's probably one of those rare moments that like they are appreciating. So we're gonna get interview Rod saying, "Let me tell you what it's like to manage a rock band. We're driving all over Helen Creations, city to city, roadies and crew, the whole nine, and not one person, not one, ever asks how we're always stocked up on gas or beer or the special tea Daisy likes that you can only get shipped in from Thailand. No one says thank you. No one notices a goddamn thing until something goes wrong." I feel like you need to clip this thing from this bit here from interview Rod and send it to every event planner you've ever known, and send it to every executive assistant you've ever known, any assistant you've ever known, any administrative assistant you've ever known. There's a whole mess of people out there who probably saw this and were nodding their heads like, say it, Rod, tell them nobody noticed. Like, he's speaking for a lot of people here. um He's just a guy managing a tour for a rock band. That's all. We're going to see an example of this. We're going to get Rod in 1977. He's talking to a repairman who's got Nate. That's the name on his uniform. He's talking to this guy in a parking area where the two buses are stopped. He says, I know you said you won't have that part till morning, but let me ask you something. The camera slowly pushes in on Rod. He says, you like rock and roll? Then we go over to Nate. The camera slowly pushes in on Nate. Can't say I do, partner. Rod's. The camera holds as close as it was on Rod, and he says, but I bet your kids love it. The man looks up. Ooh, he got him. He saw the light in his eyes. Rod says, now you get me that crankshaft in the next half hour. He holds up some tickets. He says, you could be father of the effing year. Nate's impressed, and then we get a cut to the buses driving again. I also like the fact that the way the camera showed it, so we get like pushing in on Rod, pushing in on Nate, hold on Rod. And then when he says, uh, you get me that crankshaft in the next half hour, and he holds something up, but the camera is slightly behind Rod, so you can see that he's holding something, but not what he's holding until the camera comes around. And I like that it gives us just a minute to wonder, like, how's he solving this problem? Exactly the way somebody in his position would solve this problem. He's gonna comp him tickets. Rod has some comped tickets up his sleeve. If you want comped tickets to a Daisy Jones and the Six concert, he's the guy to go to, but he's using these for the situations where he needs to solve a problem. All right, we're going to get a pre-lap of the song 2 Against 3. Daisy's crooning into the mic. The days are wide open. And we see from the wings, the cameras in the wings, we're looking out at Daisy and Eddie playing. And this is probably going to be end of the concert sort of a song. And we heard her with this song earlier, but now we see her doing it in front of an audience. And I love the fact that this particular song, it feels like a song that needs to be Daisy's voice and a guitar, like it, and that's what it is. And they found space in the show for something like this that is a sweeter, softer, slower song. She's saying the days were wide open at the heart of all my joy. Boys were invincible lovers just begging to be destroyed. Rod and Billy are in the wings watching this. They're both staring at Daisy, but in different ways. Rod this is the show. He's watching to make sure everything's good. He has probably a million things to sort out and make sure everything's moving smoothly after this. Billy has sort of maybe a little bit of a forlorn look, definitely fixated. He's all the way fixated. And Daisy crooning out this song, nothing better than that. Billy gulps a bit. Rod looks over at Billy and he sees Billy's just like unhealthy, unbroken stare. And he has Rod's eyes. It's a little like, okay. Interview, Rod says it's one thing dealing with station attendants, but Daisy and Billy, that was a whole other kettle of fish. Look at a pre-lap here of the river. And we're going to see Billy throwing his head back and sort of shimmying a little bit as he's playing guitar. Daisy throws her head back, comes to her mic. Doesn't look... Something I noticed here, because I'm guessing they're playing this song roughly at the same point in the set, but we see a number of different shows. We hear the song or pieces of the song The River more than once in this episode, and at other times we hear it like she's like drenched with sweat, but here she's not really, and I think that speaks more to the amount of drugs she's taking and how out of it she is as she gets further along in this episode. She's wearing a beautiful black shawl here, and this is where the sequence really starts with the different black outfits, or at least top up. If they're shirts or just the shawl or whatever. So she's a whole different montage of black outfits. We're gonna get If I Follow You to the River from both Daisy and Billy. Daisy takes her mic off the stand. She leans into the crowd, and the shadows crawling towards you. And she's definitely engaged with the crowd. She engages with the crowd for so much of this episode, but at this point when she's still very much coherent, you can see that she's actually connecting with them. And then we're going to see another way to show us the passage of time through the playing of the song The River in all these different concerts. We're going to see the different outfits, and we're going to see the buses driving between cities more than once here. Then we're going to see the band looking around a big stadium on arrival. We go back to this first show. We're going to see Billy saying, "Oh, I'll follow you to the river. Daisy, I will take you there." The buses are driving again. The shadows in the river, your affection is a promise you couldn't keep. The buses are driving again. We're going to see Daisy putting her hand out to touch one of the fans' hands. So like she's still very much coherent and interacting in equal collaborative way with fans. Daisy is going, I know. which sounds great here, but it's going to sound terrible later in this episode. We're going to see a point where she raises her arms in another beautiful black shawl. And she has, in this part, her makeup is starting to get sort of smeared with sweat a little bit. Her hair's a little bit matted. She turns to the camera. She falls back into the crowd to crowd surf. Uh, we're going to get more of the song, If I Follow You to the River, from Billy. Daisy comes over to Billy. This feels like an important shift that we're seeing through this sequence in this episode. At this point, Daisy comes over to Billy. She walks over with her mic. She says, "If I follow you down," he says, "to the river." We get another shot from another time of her laughing with Billy. Daisy saying, "To the river, your affection is a promise you couldn't keep." We're going to see a shot of Daisy pulling Karen onto the stage, having fun with it. Back to Daisy in the same song, doing I want you there. Billy continuing to say, "I'll follow you to the river." At this point, Daisy drops her arm with her mic and she goes to sing in Billy's mic. She says, "I'm an echo and your shadow." It's very flirty, and Nikki sees it. We've seen them interact a little bit at the beginning of the tour, but there was a distance between them, and something feels different here. It feels like a little bit of water is under that bridge. They're starting to interact more. Daisy's having more fun with the fans. She's interacting with Billy a little bit more, and this feels flirty. So Nikki clocks that. And then I've got to tell you, when I look at this part of the song in this episode, it looks to me like a sexual climax. Like the way this is acted by Billy and Daisy, by Sam and Riley, they're both really sweaty. They're both like full out singing, belting to each other. Daisy saying, "I know, I want you there." Billy is doing a long "oh." Daisy says, I know, I want you there." And I mean, it's a lot. It's like get a cigarette after this sort of acting. And again, Nikki's there for the whole thing. He sees it all. Daisy says, "Thank you, Houston." We stay on Nikki's face. His smile flickers a bit. Uh, all is not well here. I think he's seeing that a shift has happened. And he has. We confirm that because the next scene, we're going to see Daisy and Nikki in a hotel bed. Daisy takes a pill and a glass of champagne. Nikki is in bed thinking deep thoughts. He's got a lot on his mind, that man. His arm is to his forehead. Daisy looks at him. She says, "What's wrong?" He says, "When he's in the room, you're not yourself. Have you noticed that?" He looks at Daisy. She inhales deeply. She says, "I'm always myself." Nikki says, "But you care what he thinks, and that makes you a little less you." He turns over in bed, facing away from her. I mean, it's a short scene, that little bit that they added on, but who knows what you're feeling like, Nikki? Camilla, that's who knows. Yeah, I think this looked like one thing when she was hurt and protecting herself from Billy and angry at Billy. But as some of the water goes under the bridge, and as she lets her guard down a little bit, he's beginning to see a little bit more of what that palpable connection between them actually was. And he knows it as soon as he sees it. And that can't feel good. First of all, because he's married to her. Second of all, because he's not even in his home country right now. He's got none of his support system here. If anything, Daisy was the person who brought the light back into his life when he was in Greece. And through after a period of what I perceive to be depression and grief and deep grieving, she was the thing that made it light. But then here she is back in her world, and this is kind of a bit of what it looked like. Like when she was just, I don't know how much was described to Nikki in terms of her explaining the conflict with Billy, but maybe some of the things Simone was saying are starting to register a little bit more with Nikki. So It's got to be alarming for him. And, here she is on tour. She's going to stay on tour. She's got commitments and there's contracts to fulfill. And what's he going to do? Where's he going to go? Is he now in a position of having to babysit this thing? So things shift in this montage, and it shifts for Nikki too, because he sees it all. And the one thing you can say for Camilla is she hasn't had to watch it up close, but she's felt bad about not being able to see what's unfolding. So I don't know what the better option is here. But Nikki's getting an eyeful. That's for sure. Okay, so we're going to go to a press conference, and I love the choices here to make this feel as chaotic as possible in terms of how this is shot. So first of all, there's a ton of flash bulbs happening throughout this scene, which are really disorienting for me and probably for are intended to be that way. The band is on a stage at tables. The reporters are shouting Billy's name. They're raising their hands. One of the reporters says, "Who makes that coat, Daisy?" We see a whip pan from the reporter. It overshoots Daisy to Billy, and then it comes back to Daisy, and it feels like intentionally reckless and wild, that camera choice. And so we go back to Daisy, and then we get Karen, and then go back to Daisy. She says, "I don't know." We cut back to the reporter. He says, "And your shoes?" We cut back to Daisy. She says, "Why are you asking me about my clothes, man? I mean, why don't you ask Billy about that dumb looking shirt he has on?" We get a close up on Billy. He smiles. And pause there for a second. I mean, how many times have we heard actresses talk about this a lot? Like, you spend so much time talking about the fashion or about what's it, tell me how you balance being an actor with being a mom. Like, these types of questions get you away from talking about your craft and the work that you did. And so Daisy here in 1977 is saying the same thing here to a reporter. We get some laughter from the reporters. Another reporter says, "The room's a little quieter here." The reporter says, "More fun to miss than to be with. Who's that about?" We get a whip pan to Billy. "Oh, come on, man. They're just songs." He chuckles a little. The cut to the reporter. "Is that true, Daisy?" Cut to Daisy. "No song is ever just a song." Billy smiles, but it's not really a smile, now is it? Eddie raises his mic. "You guys gonna ask us any questions?" "No, Eddie. They're not going to ask you questions. You're just on stage here." Hands get raised in the crowd. Another reporter says, "What's going on with the two of you?" In direct response to Eddie's question. Billy says, "Who, Eddie and me?" There's more laughter. Fun little way to deflect that, Billy, but not going to work. Another reporter says, "Do you still think Daisy is a head case?" Cut to Billy. Pan to Daisy. She's looking at him inquisitively. Hmm? Hmm? The flash bulbs are going. Billy says, "That's not what I said." Daisy makes a face like, "Oh, is it not what you said?" The reporter says, "It's right here in quotations." Pan across to Graham and Karen. Oh no. Cut to Billy. Cut to the press. Pan across them. Pan across the press. I mean, it's like, well, that's a great way to cause as much chaos, both in how it's shot and in the question itself. Billy says, "Anybody else got a question?" "Yes, sir, you in the back." Reporter says, "Why aren't you playing Look at Us Now on this tour?" Billy's like, "Damn it." He says, "Well, it's a great song, but there we're a different band now. We have lots of great songs, but we just needed to make room for a few new songs." Daisy's face through this whole answer. By this question, she's feeling very validated. These are the things she's been saying. Um, she, so at the point when he gets that we just needed to make room for new songs, she interrupts. She says, "That's not the reason." Billy whips his head. Daisy takes a breath to say something that is going to light the entire room on fire. And so does Rod, because Rod goes, "Ah, damn, look at the time." "Sorry, folks, that's going to have to be it." Reporters are clamoring here. Daisy gets up and leaves. You hear a woman say, "Daisy, come back, please." Billy says, "Thank you." Typical way that these two handle press. Billy saying thank you, Daisy just walking away. The rest of the band is dazed. They don't know what just happened. Nothing happened to them specifically, actually. Nobody asked them a question. Warren says, "We done?" Um, we're gonna get another scene out in the hallway here for a second, but I do just want to say, like, press conference wise, there is an option to have a moderator. Why? Oh, why is not like, okay, in a perfect world, you might get like a publicist to be moderating this or a manager, but you at least have Rod there. Like, get your tour manager to be. Rod knows where the bodies are buried. Rod knows what the hot button issues are. And Rod could have potentially steered more of this from the stage area, from like where the tables were. And I know you want chaos in this scene when you make it a scene like this. And yeah, sometimes you do just get athletes standing alone, or people standing alone, actors standing alone to do their press. But it is not unusual to have somebody, especially for a group, moderating and deciding who gets to ask questions. So I guess they gave Billy that role here. But this would have been an opportunity for Rod to be able to cherry pick the people that he knew were going to ask questions that were safe questions to respond to. And he also, if not in the back of the room, could have helped steer away a little bit more once things started going to more personal questions. Because, of course, the reporters want the personal questions, that they're doing their job. Like, that's how it's supposed to be. To leave the band up there to fend for themselves uh is maybe not what you would have done here. um I don't know. There were other options, is what I'm saying. Are they customary to do for a band in the 70s? I don't know, but there are other options that potentially could cause less havoc, or at least control the chaos a little bit more. But the whole scene is meant to feel chaotic. And now we go into a fight scene between Billy and Daisy. And I feel iffy about this scene because of Daisy. So I don't know. Here, let me talk through it and tell you where I have issues. So Billy fast walk chases Daisy into the hallway. Billy and they are basically in a private hallway. Like, no, we don't see anybody else except one person who's sort of like just working the venue. Billy says, "Hey, when are you going to grow the F up?" Daisy says, "Hopefully never. When are you going to stop being an effing liar?" Billy says, "What am I lying about now?" She says, "Your whole effing life is an effing lie. I mean, do you effing hear the shit that comes out of your mouth, man?" Billy's like, "It's one thing after another with you." This is like, "Did you effing hear yourself back there?" She is just done. Billy scoffs. She pushes him up against the wall. Maybe pause there for a second. Um, I mean, look, they've been, I think the water that's gone under the bridge for them so far in the tour has probably only been because they decided not to talk about the thing that they came, like the elephant in the room. We're not going to talk about that. Um, and so they could maybe not feel all the heat that comes up when that happens. But here they are in a room full of reporters who, of course, are going to ask the personal questions because it's going to give them the best story. It's the stuff all the fans want to know the answer to. And so those are the questions they're going to ask. And it just brings it all to the surface. And Billy is glossing over everything. And Daisy's feeling pretty validated. Like, in a way, it to her feels like the reporters are backing her up by saying this is a story, like, and this is a problem. So she comes out of here heated, and he kind of has to take it. Um, so she pushes him up against a wall. She says, "I effing know you." She gets in his face. She says, "And you know I do, and that's what scares you, huh?" Her volume comes down a bit here. He says, "You think I'm full of shit?" She says, "I do." "You think I'm full of shit? Me?" She says, "Yeah, I do." He says, "What about you? What about you and Nikki?" Daisy says, "What about it? What about it?" Billy says, "What, you want to believe that that's real, that you're happy, that you're in love?" She says, "I am happy. I am in love." She's shouting it. He says, "Oh, come on, Daisy." He says, "Oh, come on. I know you, Daisy." She says, "You don't know a goddamn thing." He says, "I think I know what it looks like when you're in love with somebody." And he's so close, it's impossible to believe they're not kissing. His nose touches her nose. He's like getting in there like he's going to make out with her. And then she pushes him against the wall. She hits him on the shoulder and she walks away. Um, okay. So I guess big picture, it's an explosive scene. The feeling is strong between these two. The sexual tension between these two is very strong. The wound has been ripped open again, one that they were trying not to talk about, I think. And I think it raised stuff for both of them, but Billy is trying to pretend he has plausible deniability here. I think they both see through each other completely, and the fact that neither of them is willing to look inside and see what's happening for themselves is pissing the other one off. In terms of execution of this scene, I would be curious to know if I've just overthought this scene or if it just doesn't land for me. Like, does it work for everybody else? I think Sam Claflin is amazing in this scene. I think Riley Keough, I have a hard time deciding. And the fact that I have a hard time deciding means I'm not in the scene. I'm like not if I'm thinking about it, I can't be immersed in it. I feel like Riley Keough overdoes it in places. I wonder in a couple moments if the camera angle doesn't do her favors because it almost makes her face look more pleasant when it's shot from certain angles than it should be in this scene. And that might not be what was really happening. It might just be the angle that it was shot at. Um, I wonder what the other takes of this looked like because I feel like there are moments when she overdoes it. But here's where I question myself. She is taking more and more drugs. And by the end of this episode, we're going to see what it looks like when Daisy's really out of it, really like she has a bit of a progression. There are moments where she has this like rage, and then when she's really far along, she's out of it. She's not out of it here, but the rage we are feeling, and she gets really big in her rage. So maybe that is something we're meant to be seeing here as like a modulating performance thing to bring us further into the drug habit. But I feel like I'm missing something to get there. I feel like we either skipped a step in the modulation or I needed to see more drug use, if that's going to be my interpretation of it. I don't know. I have a little bit of a hard time with this, but then I watch Sam Claflin and just point for point, every beat feels exactly right. So I don't know. I'm trying to decide if this is exactly what they intended or if they did one too many takes of this. Um, and grabbed one of the last ones. I'm not sure. I'm curious to see what other people think about it because maybe I'm reading it the way I should when I say like she's just like gets really big, really angry in this first stage of being on drugs. Okay. They have this big fight, and then we get a pre-lap of the river. Daisy's in a white shawl here. She's the good girl. Singing, "Oh, if I follow you there." Billy's saying to the river. And in this one, it's like a white shawl, but there's like maybe a floral design on it. Daisy's walking past him, avoiding him on stage. He gives her a bit of a side eye, just like being wary of her. Daisy's saying in the river, "Your affection." She gives him an angry look. "Is a promise you couldn't keep. I know, I know, I know, I want you there." Billy is singing along too. I'll follow you to the river." He's looking, I don't know if sheepish is the word I want to use. He is like, I got to watch out for angry Daisy. That's the vibe I get from Billy. Daisy is just full on angry. The song ends. She says, "Thank you, good night." So rarely is she the one to say thank you, but here we are. Her brow creases a bit. Doesn't feel as good. She doesn't seem, this isn't the feeling of being in flow that she's had in some of the previous concerts. Billy isn't feeling good about things. He's at the door of his bus throwing beer bottles to break them. Graham comes up with more beer. He's like, "How many of those have you had?" Billy says, I'm not drinking them." Graham says, "Want to talk about it?" Billy shakes his head. Graham's like, "Do you want to break some shit?" Billy smiles. Graham knows him well. So we're gonna see Billy go to throw another beer bottle, get a pre-lap of some instrumental rock song. I'm not sure what song this is. Um, but yeah, Billy's gonna throw another beer bottle to break it. It's just destroying stuff. It's cathartic. Okay, we're going to see in that same song this like really powerful rock entry. Camilla comes out of an airport. She's going to visit the band. She's going to visit Billy. She comes out of the airport. Her bags are being carried for her out to a black car. I mean, she looks like a star. She's got like the full white outfit compared to the black outfits we saw Daisy performing in earlier. She's got this white outfit, this big white coat, white hat, big glasses. She looks like a star trying to go incognito. Um, we're going to see the door gets opened of the car. Billy is inside. Hello, Mrs. Dunn, he says. Hello, Mr. Dunn, she says, and she flops in and they kiss. Then we cut to them lying in bed. She's lying on his stomach. They're both facing up and their hands are entwined. She says they've got this great sort of surf rock sound to them. So I was thinking of shooting a cover out in Zuma, maybe Magic Hour with the band standing right in front of the ocean, the waves in the background. So she's getting some photography gigs. She's going to shoot another band. And he says, well, they'd be lucky to have you. She says, thank you. She says, you deserve it. She says, I love you. I mean, look how it's dotting all the I's, crossing the T's around here. They can hear a party happening upstairs. So she starts to get up to join the party, to get ready for the party at least. She says, come on, let's go get ready. He says, can we just stay in bed? She says, and not go to the party? He says, and not go anywhere, ever. He's hiding. He's hiding from everything at this point. He's hiding from the party because he was always hiding from the party. He's also probably hiding from Daisy. And he's hiding Camilla from Daisy. And he's hiding Camilla and him from Daisy. Camilla says, come on, let's go. She kisses him. He says, all right, I'm up. They're going to arrive at the party. Warren comes up to give her a big hug. Karen hugs Camilla. Graham hugs her. Daisy and Nikki come in from the next room, not knowing that she was going to be there. Daisy looks between Billy and Camilla, as does Nikki. Billy kind of smiles a little at Daisy. It's awkward. It's like can we have a ceasefire for 5 minutes? Like it's it just is like, hey, that thing that happened the last scene, can we not right now with my wife here? Daisy goes to greet Camilla with her eyes wide. Hi. Camilla hugs her. She says, hi. Daisy says, only you could get Billy to a party. I don't really know if I understand this expression. Camilla looks back at Billy, well, almost like a what? Billy hasn't been going to parties. I don't know why that would be a surprise, but it feels like a surprise to Camilla here. Billy smiles a bit uncomfortably. Daisy gestures to Nikki. She says, you remember Nikki? Camilla hugs him, which is even more awkward for Billy for some reason. She says, hi, Nikki. He says, hi. Nikki says, would you like a drink? So she says yes, and she puts her arm around Billy. Nikki comes back with some drinks. And Camilla's wearing this like feisty leopard print dress. She's sort of side hugging slash like top side hugging Billy. She says, I missed you guys. I really have. Nikki gives not only her a glass, but he also gives a glass to Billy. And they're going to say thank you. Billy takes the glass, but he doesn't know what to do with it. Camilla super smooth, just grabs his glass and holds it herself. And she says, so start from the top. What have I missed? And it sort of distracts things and it sort of lets Billy relax for a second. He chuckles a little bit at that. This thing from Nikki giving Billy a glass I don't know if it feels like either Daisy hasn't talked to Nikki about Billy's situation. It does not. It could be that it's like a passive aggressive move. I just don't think Nikki would be doing that in front of Camilla right now. So I tend to think it's not that. It's almost like more insulting that Daisy hasn't even informed Nikki about this very important aspect. Like, but how could that not be? Because like Billy never parties with them. Like I I do wonder if Daisy has ever explained this to Nikki and to what extent she has. Um, or maybe it's just been like he's too much of a stick in the mud and he doesn't want to party with us. Um, I don't know. It's a little hard to tell because I do have a hard time buying the idea that Nikki is making a move like this in front of Camilla if it's meant to be like, "Oh, here, have a glass of champagne." It's not really how the champagne is delivered to them, and it's not really how Camilla receives it, and it's not really how Billy receives it. So it is a an interesting choice in this scene for that to happen, and it makes me wonder, is it just like Daisy's never bothered to share this bit of Billy with Nikki, or like that's such a private thing that she's not revealing that to her husband? Um, and is that insulting to Billy, or does that make him feel better? I don't know. Makes me wonder about a lot of things. Okay, we're going to hear the song Hollywood Swinging by Kool and the Gang. We're going to pan from Nikki drinking to Daisy. Daisy saying, moral of the story is don't hide your effing drugs in your favorite guitar case. I really miss that guitar. We're going to see the camera's sweeping through the room. Graham is snorting some coke. Karen's next to him. We're going to see Camilla and Karen dance. More drugs being taken. More of Billy being uncomfortable and standing alone. Camilla parts from Karen. She says, I'm going to get a breath of fresh air. I'll be back. Camilla goes outside on the balcony. Of course, Eddie is out there and she sees him. Oops. Was trying to avoid him, but oh well. He comes over. He says, hey. She says, hi. He says, hey. She says, hi. We do that whole thing twice because that's how weird this is. He says, so can we talk about it, please? She says, we don't have to talk about it. He says, well, I would feel better, you know? She says, Eddie, he says, then why? Camilla's hand goes to her face. He says, I'm just trying to understand. She says, I was confused and I was hurt and you were there for me. You're always there for me. He says, I can be there again. She tilts her head a little bit. It's an interesting shot that they chose here because from this camera angle with them both in frame, they look physically close to each other, but they're not meant to be. Um, Camilla says, look, I'm glad that it happened. I am. I just never want it to happen again. Or it's just never going to happen again, I should say. Eddie grins and bears it. It's a grin and bear kind of a look. Camilla goes back inside. And that is that. We are going to get a record spinning, overhead record spinning. The song Honeysuckle Song by Royston is playing. We see Karen and Graham, Warren and some girl are sitting on a sofa looking at Daisy and Nikki, who seem to be telling a story or about to. Daisy and Nikki are reminiscing. They're holding hands. They're pretty locked in, connected with each other here. Nikki says, no, I said, we'll never hit the ground. Daisy's like, you tell it. Nikki's like, you sure? So we see that everybody is watching them in this room. Billy and Camilla are also standing watching them. Billy is standing in front of Camilla. Camilla's like kind of hugging over his shoulders, and cannot see necessarily the expression on Billy's face for this scene. So Nikki says, so we jumped and everything got slow and I looked at Daisy. Daisy is looking at him. Everybody is. She says, I looked at Daisy and the moon was like, it was in her hand. She was placing it there in the sky. Eddie's listening to this and he's just grumpy. Nikki says the Italians have an expression, tu sei mia anima gemella. You're my twin soul. At this, the connection between Daisy and Nikki is broken and Daisy looks straight at Billy and stays looking at Billy. And Billy is gazing back at her with an unbroken, fixed gaze. And Nikki sees their unbroken stare in the middle of trying to tell this story. He finishes the story right quick. He says, and then we smacked into the water and I thought we were dead. Like, wait a must break moment between wife and other man. Like it's so rattling. You hear some laughter from everybody, and he says, which is a little bit less romantic. But the moment is broken. Nikki looks at Billy. Billy finally breaks his stare. Awkwardness abounds. I mean, gosh, if you're Nikki here, here Nikki and Camilla are both in the room, but Camilla is behind Billy, so she could probably see Daisy, but Can she see the look on Billy's face? Probably not exactly, but Nikki's got a full view of it. So, and he's been seeing this on stage every night. That night, we're going to see Nikki on top of Daisy. They're having sex, and she is completely disengaged. Surely he feels this and notices this. Like, it's just not good for Nikki right now. And I don't know. It's got to be lonely because she pulled him out of his loneliness in Greece, of loneliness that his other friends were not able to pull him out of. And she was this whirlwind that came into his life, and they had all these wonderful times. They're reminiscing about their wedding night here, and it was all so wonderful. And now here he is, another continent, her world, her industry, her environment. She is being celebrated everywhere they go. He feels weird about talking, like he feels weird about talking about uh his job or his status or his family background. And the people who do hear about it now are not so impressed. They're kind of making fun of him. And then Daisy's eyes are turning now to Billy, and he can feel how much the dynamic has been shifting between Daisy and Billy, and he maybe didn't have all the information he should have had when he got married to her. And what do you do? I mean, I guess in this situation you could try to cling harder. You could you could walk away from it. I don't know what his options really are, but he's hanging in. Okay, next day, Camilla's going to say goodbye to Billy at the airport. She's got her white dress on because, Camilla in white, Daisy in black. That's how we've been doing it around here. She says, I love you. She starts to walk away. He grabs back for her. He says, hey. She says, hmm. He says, I love you. She says, me too. She runs off. She looks back. She blows him a kiss. He smiles after her, and then the smile fades. It was nice to have his wife here for a minute. It feels like this is when people talk about having affairs, they talk about the affair as the escape from the regular life. And in a way, his regular life is the realness that he feels with Daisy. And it feels like this is the escape with Camilla, except she's his wife and they have a kid. And it's so backwards. But it feels like this was the fling, but the fling was just like uh, a supportive partner, like a companion. I don't know, because I feel like he's wired in such a way that he's like the constancy of the dynamic he has with Daisy is what feels natural and normal to him, and this is the reprieve. Should be the reverse, but here it is. Okay, so we're going to get a knock on a door. We're going to see a reflection in a mirror of Daisy opening it and finding Rod holding a tray of food. He greets her. She says, wow, that's a lot of food. He says, yeah, I noticed you didn't eat dinner last night. Or lunch, for that matter. She cocks her head. He's not leaving without her taking it. Very clear. So she says, thank you, and takes it. And he says, you got some mail there too. She shuts the door on him. That's about par for the course with Daisy, it feels like. She doesn't even do an Irish goodbye, that one. I'm a big believer in the Irish goodbye myself, but she won't even do that. She just gets up and walks away from you. She's one of those people who hang up the phone without saying goodbye, I'm sure. And he's saying, I'm keeping an eye on your health, and I'm noticing not all is right here. And probably, whatever substances she's on is suppressing her appetite. So we're getting hints along the way that the drug use has been increasing, and um, that's certainly going to ramp up by the end of this. She brings all the tray back to her bed. Nikki's asleep there. There's a beautiful stack of pancakes. She takes a strawberry and eats that. She holds up a letter that's addressed to Margaret Daisy Jones. It's forwarded to the hotel. She throws it in the trash, holds herself a little, and then takes it back out of the trash. I think that tells you everything you need to know about where she's at right now with her feelings about herself when she thinks about her mom. She snorts some coke. And then kind of a good choice for cutting here to pass some time. She goes she bends down to snort some coke, comes up snorting it at backstage at a concert. Um, Billy is watching. She walks right up to him. She says, I see you still like to watch. And she walks away from him. Remember, we saw that happen in the episode where they were doing so, like, in I think it was episode 6, where they were doing so much, um, writing so many songs, and she lost energy. And she says, I had it in the car. She's losing. You know, he says, it's okay if you take your drugs while I'm in the room. And then they go to the beach. So we've seen it happen there. And she's saying, you still like to watch, do you? All kinds of meanings there. Um, and she walks away from him after she's taken some drugs. And then we're going to see the song Regret Me getting played. And Daisy's a bit unbalanced. She's a little wobbly. She's looking a little out of it. Her interaction, before there was something fun and exciting about the way she interacted with fans, but here she's kind of sneering. It's kind of a darkness. Not quite sinister, but sneering is the word I'd use. Daisy's saying, so go ahead and regret me, but I'm beating it. I'm beating you to it, dude. This might be my favorite part of their songs. Billy going, right? Go ahead and regret me, and I'm beating you to it, dude. You regret me. That, like, just that, Sam Claflin. Gets me every time. Okay, Daisy's singing, you regret me and I'll regret you. Billy's shaking his shoulders. I mean, Billy is still very much, I mean, he's not on substances, so he is very much interacting as he would normally interact. It's Daisy who's changing. Daisy's saying you couldn't handle your liquor and you can't seem to handle the truth. You get these really wild eyes here. Both are saying I'm the slippage in the system and I'm perfectly ready to strike. So go ahead and regret me, but I'm not easing up on this mic. Daisy keeps sort of flopping over and coming up with her hair kind of strewn about. And Billy's watching all this. And I find myself thinking it must be hard to sing well when you're like folding your diaphragm over and like bending your body like that. And that's the point. She's probably not singing very well right now. It's one thing to have choreography, and it's another thing to contort yourself in a way where you can't get air to your lungs properly. Um, okay, so interview Billy says, I was the only one who seemed to notice something had changed. We're gonna get an instrumental part here. Daisy gets kind of lost in her dancing. She comes back to the mic too late. She misses a couple words. We get you regret. Billy starts you regret. Daisy then jumps in me and I'll regret you. She was supposed to sing that whole phrase. Gets a little microphone feedback. I mean, it's a bit messy, no question. Daisy walks back on stage. She leaves Billy to sing alone. He finds himself alone singing, I find it perfectly natural here in my car to be doing. He wasn't supposed to sing that alone. He noticed she's not singing, so he looks back to see where she is. She's snorting coke from the stage. He looks at Rod. Rod's like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, so that's the state of the union right now with Daisy. And she what's the thing that changed? It was the fact that she's gotten a letter from her mom. She hasn't even opened it. She already feels what it feels like to talk to or hear from her mom. That's all she needed, just the reminder of her mom. And that's the thing that changed. And Billy knows her so well that he clocks it. Not that it's particularly subtle. But for interview everybody, I can't imagine they would know why things changed here. All right, we're going to go back to the bus after the concert. We're going to see a woman roll back Graham's curtain, one of the fans he's reading. She's getting flirty with him. This is clearly some sort of a dare or some sort of a bet. Graham says, hey. The woman says, hey, Graham, I've been looking all over for you. She pulls him close, and he's like, whoa. He squirms away. He's like, sorry, I just, he kind of shuffles past her to get to the others, to get to the safety of the group. And there's some laughter happening. Eddie says to Warren, all right, come on, give me the money. And so they've had some sort of a bet over this. And Graham's like, oh, great, that was a bet. And he says, you know, they got medicine now that could fix that all up for you, man. Warren says, nobody has VD for a whole year. Um, this was what they've been speculating. Eddie says, well, then what could it be? Are you into dudes now or something? Karen's like feeling bad that he's getting like this much flack, and she's trying to decide whether to say something. Graham says, look, I don't have to explain myself to you guys, all right? You know, what a hero that Graham is, just trying to stand up for and keep his woman's secret. Um, and he says, it's okay if you are, you know. But not well, I said it softer. Eddie's drunk. Karen feels really bad, and he's like, I still love you, man. Warren says, me too, just not like that. That feels on brand. They chuckle. Karen decides to jump in and save him because now she's going to save her man. She says, guys, he's not into dudes. Graham freezes, looking at her. You can see in his head, it's like, it's happening. It's happening. It's happening. Uh, Karen says, and his dick it's perfect. Graham's blown away. She's saying it. It's happening. Karen says, we've been screwing since the album sessions. Warren's I like the eye choices here. Warren squints. Eddie is wide-eyed. Opposite choices, perfect effect when sitting next to each other. Karen's like, we've been screwing since the album sessions, in the studio, in the car, on the bus. Graham's like, Karen. Eddie, once again, I love Josh Whitehouse's choices every single time. He raises his eyebrows, but his eyes are closed. It's like, it's so good. Karen says, you guys have just been too up your own effing asses to notice. She smiles proudly. I said it, is what she's thinking. Eddie and Warren burst into laughter. Graham shakes his head at her, like, thanks for trying. Like, thanks for trying, don't bother, is the essence of that. And Warren's like, come on, let's get serious. Karen gets up. She says, you don't believe me? She starts making out with Graham and walks him back to a private space back in the bus. Eddie and Warren are like, oh, that was, oh. Interview Graham does not kiss and tell, but he is a little bashful. All right, what's happening for Daisy and Nikki? We're going to hear a car horn honking. Daisy's laying on Nikki on the bus. There's sunlight in her face. She says, oh, what time is it? She kisses him. She says, I have to go. I have to go to sound check. Nikki says, Daisy Jones doesn't need to rehearse. She says, yes, I do. Nikki starts to get his drugs in order. She says, oh God, I don't want that. I don't want that right now. Nikki pressures her. He says, come on. He kisses her shoulder. He says, come on, don't make me do it on my own. And she reluctantly snorts. She does it. She takes the drugs, but she is reluctant about it. I think she is feeling like, I don't know if this was really a fork in the road moment, though. It sort of comes across that way. Like, if not for this, maybe it wouldn't have gone so bad. I don't think so. I think she's already pretty far gone. I think this is more than a one morning issue. But I think, I don't know, I think this is meant to show you how far gone both of them are. Um, they've been partying all this time, and emotional tensions are running higher, or there's tension in ways that there wasn't before. Nikki's probably feeling insecure as hell in this relationship. And I think he probably feels like he needs to babysit this relationship more. Maybe he likes how fiery Daisy gets when she's high. Um, because that can sometimes lead to yelling at Billy, and that might be more of the rift that he wants, because that's better for him than Daisy loving Billy and feeling attracted to Billy. So I don't know. I think this they don't have a connection in many things, but they do have a connection in taking drugs together and drinking together. And Nikki's like, that's all he's got right now. It feels like. Um, and so they're just going down this really unfortunate road. We're gonna see getting in line for getting food in a venue. Graham's talking to Billy. He's like, I mean, I can stay if you want, but Karen's pretty settled on the other bus. So Billy smiles. He's like, Graham, he's not going to do this to his little brother. Billy's like, you can sleep wherever you want, man. It's fine. Graham smiles. He's like, I'm happy for you. And Graham is stoked. He's like, "Thanks." He's bringing a plate of food to Karen. He was like, "No, you sit and you regale people with the stories of my perfect dick, and I am going to get you food. I'm going to hunt and gather." So he's been getting some food for Karen, and it just reminds me that in the very first episode when we first met young Billy and Graham, Billy was consoling Graham because Graham had broken up with somebody or somebody had rejected him, and it was like the love of his life to that point, and he didn't think he'd ever find another woman. And I don't know if he ever did until Karen, and then here we are, and he got Karen. Um, and he was keeping it secret, but now this feels like a really nice brother moment. It's a short moment, but I'm like, oh, like Billy is really happy for Graham. He's like, I am not going to make you stay all night. That's not a thing. But the fact that Graham is like, I could, but I just like, if Billy had said, I need you on this bus, Graham probably would have done it. But nobody's going to do that to Graham. Okay, Billy looks back from the food line. He's looking at Daisy and Nikki. Daisy is discreetly ish popping a pill. She's looking out of it. She's not eating. She doesn't really have plate. She's got no food. She gets up. She leaves. He brings his food over to sit with Rod. We're hearing overlapping chatter in the room. Billy's saying, "You can't tell me you don't see it." She's tripping up on stage. She's mixing up the lyrics. Come on. Rod says, "I'm not blind, Billy. What do you want me to do about it?" Billy says, "I want you to talk to her." Rod says, "Okay, and tell her what?" Billy says, "The truth." Timothy Oliphant. Rod laughs with his mouth closed around a mouthful of food. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, "Oh, you're serious." Billy's hand goes to his forehead. Not quite like that, but there are just so many of those gestures in this episode. Rod says, "I have a lot of responsibilities, Billy, but being honest ain't one of them. And being honest around here gets you nothing but fired. Talk to the husband. Maybe he can get through to her." Billy looks over at Nikki like, okay, maybe. Nobody thinks this is going to work out well. Rod, you shouldn't have recommended this. That's not going to work out well. Um, but Rod's like, I know all about like job security and talking to Daisy with the conversation you want me to have, isn't it? Uh, so, oh my gosh, I just love Timothy Oliphant so much. Every choice he makes is so fun. The laugh he gives when Billy's like, "Tell her the truth." Ron's like, "What?" So good. Billy walks over to Nikki. This is never going to end well. Raise your hand if the first time you saw this, you thought this was going to end well. It doesn't. He walks over to Nikki's table as Nikki is smoking. And is there any circumstance where this could have worked out okay? Yes, I think so. I think approaching Nikki privately. I think sitting down and actually sounding concerned might have helped. But what happens instead is Billy walks over to Nikki's table and he stands over Nikki, dominating. Billy, this isn't it. Um, Nikki's eyes turn to Billy, and then they have to go up a little bit because Billy is standing over him. Billy says she's never taken this much before. Nikki scoffs. He's like, "Don't pretend like you care." Billy says, "What the F does that mean?" Nikki stands and he walks to the other side of Billy because you know what? If you're going to have higher status, no. And he just stands and walks. Not only does he have to be at the same level as Billy, he needs to make Billy have to respond to him. Nikki says, "You just want her to need you. That's all you care about. You see, she doesn't need you. It must kill you, doesn't it?" Billy says, "Yeah, this isn't about your marriage or whatever. I'm trying." Nikki pushes Billy. He says, "Get out of my way." Billy says, "Don't effing touch me." Nikki says, "Or what?" Billy says, "Or I'll knock your effing teeth out. That's what." Nikki laughs like, "Okay." Billy says, "Oh, is that funny?" Nikki's like, "Yeah." Billy says, "Oh, is that funny? Huh? Well, what do you think? Somebody because you think you're somebody because your silk shirts and your fancy shoes. The band starts to approach, but they give him a wide berth. He says, "You're shit, man. You're nothing, and you'd be nothing without her." And Nikki says, "I guess that makes two of us then, doesn't it?" With a little smile, because he knows that's gonna get Billy. And let's see. I'm gonna go through the rest of this scene before I pause. Billy punches Nikki. Nikki punches him back. They're really going out of here. They crash into a table. They break a table. Warren, love this. Warren is eating a sandwich, and Graham goes to help Billy, and Warren just holds up an arm and keeps eating his sandwich. Like, just let him do their thing. Interview Warren says, "I've been wanting to punch that royal prick since Tulsa." Billy is continuing to swing at Nikki. He's on top, swinging at Nikki on the floor. Rod pulls Billy off of him. Daisy rushes to Nikki. She shouts to Billy, "Are you out of your effing mind? What the F is wrong with you, huh?" Rod says, "Everybody calm down. We've got a show to do." Billy storms off. Nikki sneers after him. Daisy helps him to stand. She's like, "He's crazy. What did you say?" And Nikki's just sort of shaking his head. There's kind of a lot going on in this scene here. I think, first of all, Nikki is on drugs. Nikki is high and Billy is not. So the level of explosiveness from Nikki is going to be different than we would have seen in episode 7. Because he's pretty, like, he doesn't seem to be like where Daisy's at, but he's like, emotions are running high for Nikki. He's in a bad situation. Billy is pulling a really domineering stance here on Nikki when he shows up. And if Billy wanted this conversation to be more productive, again, pull him aside, have this conversation in a separate room, like, sit at his level, sit lower than him, and start with something. Label it, be like, "You're gonna hate this. I know it's weird between us. I get that. I'm concerned. Like, here's what's happening on stage. Like, yes, it still probably wouldn't go great, but there are ways that it wouldn't go this bad this quickly." Uh, but Billy doesn't do any of those things. So there's that. I think Nikki is trying to stand his ground, and he's trying to make it so Billy can't dominate him in this conversation. He doesn't want to be insulted by Billy. So he's and man, these two are really punching each other. So there's that. Um, I I feel like interview Warren saying, "I've been wanting to punch that royal prick since Tulsa." I just I guess they find him completely unrelatable. Um, the kind of crowd that Nikki hung around in Greece isn't this crowd. And the, like, we just do poetry and we don't need to sing our songs in front of people group. Um, the more philosophical bunch. I mean, Warren and Eddie are just like hooking up with groupies. That's their day. Um, and I don't know if there's a lot of relatability there. Um, I don't know. I understand how Nikki is getting to where he's getting, but this isn't sustainable. This isn't working. And ultimately, Daisy could be reassuring everybody in this situation and isn't. If Daisy weren't really feeling feelings towards Billy of any nature, she could say that to Nikki and be clear about that and not be, like, but obviously something is going on there. Like, there's something, there's some sort of pull happening. There's no hiding that from Nikki, but Daisy is in the position to be able to lay down the law with these men, and she's not. So we get a fight like this. And Rod just being like, "Everybody calm down. We still got a show to do." Rod, you never should have suggested that Billy have this conversation with Nikki. Ever. It wasn't going to work. Um, okay. So we're going to get the next concert, and it's not going to be great. Miami, June 15th, 1977. We're going to get The River again. We hear this song a number of times in this episode. So once again, we have to find ways to make it feel different to us. Daisy is out of it. She is twirling around on stage, singing, "Oh," she's flailing. I'm an echo in the shadow. In the shadow, Billy's watching. She's just flailing. Um, a little reminiscent of what Billy looked like on stage in those early episodes when right before he had to be brought to rehab. Interview Graham says something was off from the beginning. Hey, what do you think that was? Graham. Well, interview Warren says, I mean, he did punch her husband in the face. Interview Karen says it was really bad energy. We just needed to get through it. So back at this concert, Daisy is really out of it. She's like, I know, I want you there. I know. She's just running on with I knows. It's so bad that even Nikki can see that. Billy doesn't know what to do. He's kind of helpless watching this unfold. Daisy stops. She just suddenly stops singing mid-word. She's dizzy. She loses her balance. The camera spins. She crashes into the drums. We get this high-pitched ringing sound. Billy takes up his guitar and he puts it down. He gets her. He walks her backstage. He walks into the wings. Warren keeps the drum beat going, but the band is kind of watching this whole thing. Nikki goes to like walk around to meet them, but we never do see him in this scene. And in the wings, Daisy's laughing. Billy puts her up against a wall to like support her. Daisy says, "What, did I look at you wrong?" He says, "You're effing bleeding, Daisy." She's laughing. She's like, "So are you." She's not. He's not. He's not also bleeding. She's really out of it. He wraps her leg a little bit because she's bleeding from her leg. She's barefoot, which is, I guess, how she performs on stage. Billy says, "You should go to the medic." The crowd starts chanting her name. He's like, "You're not going back out there, Daisy. You're done." The chanting continues, and she says, "Do you hear them?" And she says, with intensity, "You'll know when I'm done." And I love that their faces are both kind of shadowy, like half in shadow in this scene. Daisy goes back out. The crowd cheers. She goes to the mic. She raises her arms. She brings them back down slowly with a shh. Everybody quiets down. Everybody's riveted. What's going to happen next? The crowd gets quiet. Somebody shouts her name. One person didn't get quiet. The band's waiting for the next move. What happens now? Daisy sings into the mic. "Now, where do we stand, baby, baby, baby?" She looks straight at Billy, taunting him. She says, "No one knows who you are." The crowd's cheering. She's, Karen looks over at Graham like, "Oh my God, what's going to happen?" She says, "And if this is your plan, tell me why. You've been crying in the dark." Eddie's looking around like, should I be liking this or no? Rod's waiting for the shoe to drop because a shoe is going to drop. Billy takes off his guitar and leaves the stage, storms off stage. The crowd starts singing along. The band is just standing there. Everybody's singing together. "We've unraveled a long time ago. We lost and we couldn't let it go. I wish it was easy, but it isn't so, baby. Oh, we can make a good thing back." We get a shot of Eddie looking so smug. He couldn't be more happy that Billy just had this experience. "Oh, we can make a good thing bad." We see Nikki back in the wings, proud of Daisy for the power move. I mean, and happy that she's sort of defending his honor. But there was the moment where he was like, "Oh, this is really, really bad." Like even Nikki was able, both in the last episode and in this one, there are these moments where Simone tells Nikki, like, "This isn't really good for Daisy, like not going back to California." And he kind of like bristles a little bit, but then he steps back and on his own time, he takes it in and he's able to sort of put together more information. He doesn't permanently resist in that situation. So when Billy comes over in the cafeteria and says she's never taken this much before, um, you know, Nikki has this moment on stage where he's like, there may have been some truth to that. But it also feels really good that Daisy kind of wins the battle, even in this state, and makes Billy walk off stage. So it's complicated, but remember, only one of these three people is sober in this situation. So things are getting weird and wild, and that's where we're at right now. We're going to go back and see how Daisy and Nikki choose to celebrate their partying in their room to a song called In the City by The Jam. Anything goes with the camera here, okay? Anything goes. Angles, Dutch angles, them being partially framed in a shot, bottles in the foreground, all of it works. Awkward, quick edits, taking out a couple frames here, a couple frames there to make it feel really jarring. Blurring, they do just about everything you could do in the edit here. And in the shots that they got, Daisy and Nikki also anything goes. Dancing, flailing, Daisy crawling. They're dazed. One of my favorite movements here is Daisy does sort of like a spin on an angle and then falls into the bed. Something about it I love the movement of it is beautiful. She falls into bed and she shuts her eyes. Meanwhile, Billy and Rod are hashing it out in another room. Billy is pacing. He's so angry. Rod's like, come on, Billy, it's just a song. Billy says, it's not just a song, Rod, it's an effing mutiny. You know, F this. Um, and true, Rod was trying to smooth the situation over, but he also knows it's not just a song. Rod says, where are you going? Billy says, I'm kicking her out of the band. Rod's like, Billy. Billy leaves the room. Rod follows. We're now walking through the hallway. Billy's storming through the hallway. Rod's like, you can't just fire Daisy. Billy says, watch me. Rod says, at least talk to the rest of the band. Billy knocks on the door. He's heated. He points back at Rod. F you, Rod. This is my band. Yeah. Billy pounds on the door. And then we see from Nikki's side, from inside the room, we see him come to the door. His face is all red. Nikki opens the door just a little bit, and we can see Billy's face through the crack in the doorway. Billy says, I need to talk to her. Uh, Amazingly acted. This whole sequence, amazingly acted. First of all, the way that um, Gavin Drea, if that's how you pronounce his last name, his choices as Nikki here, he's really out of it. He also has been partying way too hard, and he has just he's having a really scary experience with Daisy, and he's trying to keep it secret, and he's probably super paranoid about what's happening in the room and how that would affect his life. And the drugs probably enhance the paranoia. And so he needs to get Billy away. He also currently not on good terms with Billy. Neither is Daisy. So there's nothing good about this man being at the doorway. And if he can also see Rod standing there, that's not good either. So you can see Nikki is really skittish, really like a rabbit on drugs. He's like just go away, it's fine. Sam Claflin as Billy here needs to make a really quick shift, and it happens in his eyes. Um, Billy knocks on the door aggressively, angry. He says to Nikki when Nikki answers, I need to talk to her. Angry. Nikki is super skittish. He says, everything's fine. Okay, she's fine. Just go, please. And something about Nikki being so skittish, this is not the energy he would have expected to be met with at the door. Um, Billy looks at this and alarm bells are going off for him. And his eyebrows lower a bit. What am I seeing? What did I just walk into? He looks back at Rod. Rod kind of tilts his head, I think to suggest maybe we leave him alone. Billy is standing his ground and not moving because now the need to talk to Daisy is different. Something about the energy that Nikki is meeting him with makes it feel like he needs to walk into this room for a different reason, and he doesn't know what. He says, open the door, Nikki. Nikki says, no. Billy slams his hand into the door and pushes himself into the room. Open the effing door. He walks in past Nikki. Rod follows Billy in. Billy's calling for Daisy. He walks quickly across the room, and then we see camera being set up, let's say, in the shower area. Billy walks into frame and he sees something. He runs towards the camera. terror. We're hearing the song the Bellamy Brothers Let Your Love Flow as it's like lightly playing here, and then it'll get louder as the scene goes on. Billy runs to her. We now see the behind shot of him running into the shower because that's where she's been put. She's lying on the shower floor, unconscious. He's like, Daisy, handheld camera, just feels like we're in the action. He she's lying in this big walk-in shower and he crouches over her and he's like slapping her face a little bit, trying to wake her up. He's calling her name, he's checking her vitals. Billy's like, Roger's not breathing. Um, he sits in the shower, he pulls her onto his lap, he's holding her, he's like, Daisy, it's all right, all right, all right, it's okay, I'm here. Nikki is absolutely useless. He's like full on paranoia mode right now, totally inebriated, really high, like not helpful. Who knows where his brain is right now? Rod, interesting choice for Rod here. Rod is moving with purpose, but staying cool and calm. He immediately goes to the phone. Rod picks the phone up. He says, I need you to get a message for me to Dr. Jacoby on Trinity Road. Billy is patting Daisy's face. Daisy, Daisy, Nikki's panicking. Rod's continuing on the phone. He says, tell him Rod Reyes has a toothache in room 1205. He'll know what to do. Rod enunciates every word very clearly, measured carefully. Nikki is packing frantically. Billy's checking to see if Daisy's breathing. Billy sees Nikki frantically packing. He's like, what are you doing? Nikki is at a complete loss for words. I'm sorry, I can't be here. I'm sorry. He runs out. Billy looks back down at Daisy. He's breathless. He's like put all of his energy and emotion into trying to revive Daisy. Rod pours alcohol into a towel. He holds it under Daisy's nose. Nothing. I don't know if that would work. That's what she's probably been drinking, right? Like, how would she probably wouldn't even smell that anymore. I don't know. Billy is holding her. He's like, all right, stay with me. Stay with me. Wake up, wake up. Rod takes the towel away. No response. Terrifying. Billy is just like willing her to be okay at this point. He's patting her face very quickly. Please, 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 please don't. He's hugging her very tightly. He's nuzzling her clammy face. He puts his head back against the shower. We rack focus from Daisy to Billy's face as he looks upward, sort of like pleading with God. And then we rack focus, and then we see her eyes, like she's not in focus, but we see her eyes start to open. We rack focus back to Daisy's face, and she sees him. He looks down at her. Their eyes connect, and she says very weakly, it's you. He cups her face, and the second his hand touches her face, her eyes close again. So my interpretation of this is that she's unconscious again after this moment. And the this song is at this point in the song, as it warms your face, you can't hold back. Just let your love flow like a mountain stream. Let your love grow with the smallest of dreams. Let your love show, and you'll know what I mean. It's a season. As the song's getting louder, we hear him sort of exhale a little bit, like breathe out a little bit, like maybe he's just crying softly. I mean, first of all, well acted scene. My goodness. And I think Nikki is, I think in the light of a new day when he sobers up, would any of the reasons he feels so paranoid that he needs to leave the room right now, would any of them still be true in his mind when he's sober? I'm not sure. I'm not sure why he feels like he needs to leave the room. I mean, a medical emergency is terrifying. No question about that. A medical emergency that you helped instigate and were taking part in, and the fact that he just like threw her on the shower floor and didn't know what to do about it, all that bad, right? I don't know if there's anything more to it in terms of like family reputation. I can't imagine that there is. It doesn't seem like that was the life he was living in Greece. It didn't seem like he was a guy being followed by tabloid press or paparazzi. But I do feel like this is very much a drug-induced paranoia. It's my read on it, but I have not been in a drug-induced paranoia, so I can't speak with much accuracy on that. It's just what I think I'm seeing here. Uh, and Billy, I mean, when faced with losing Daisy forever, doesn't love that. And I like the way that Rod is in this scene. He's just like has a contingency plan. He knows what to do. Um, and they'll like he has many steps in place and things he'll try. And so he's clearly had to work this out for other bands probably. And he I'm sure saw some writing on the wall here when he saw like how much Daisy's been using. So, I mean, what a powerful emotional scene. And with one person basically unconscious the whole time. But yeah, I so it's just so impressive. And mm, the amount of things I feel for Billy in this scene, my heart breaks for him as his heart breaks, wondering if this idea that when she opens her eyes and says it's you and then goes unconscious again is are those the last words he'll ever exchange or she'll ever say to him, is probably what he's thinking at the end of this episode. And that's episode 8. My goodness, powerful episode. And I can't help but say, like, we have so many concerts in this one, and they had their work cut out for them in terms of making it all feel like a progression to the story when they probably shot this for a couple of venues, or maybe one, I don't know. And so many of the songs we're hearing the same couple songs over and over and over again. So they really, I think, did a good job in making it feel like there's movement through time, movement in space, and location. So, yeah, those are some general thoughts about the episode. Now, music. Of course, we've got Dancing Barefoot by Patti Smith. That's for the opening credits. We've got the Ballroom Blitz, and that one is by Sweet. We've got, I think, Getting It On by the Affection Collection. We've got More Than a Feeling by Boston. We've got Hollywood Swinging by Kool and the Gang. We've got Honeysuckle Song by Ray Stinnett. Life's What You Make It by Baby. We've got In the City by The Jam. And then we've got Let Your Love Flow by the Bellamy Brothers. Those are the needle drops. And then Daisy Jones and the Six songs, we're going to get Kill You to Try, The River, Aurora. 2 Against 3, I guess I'm crediting that as Daisy Jones and the Six. Regret Me and Look at Us Now. Some get more play than others. The river, we hear the river a lot in this episode, no question. Okay, favorite quotes. I'm going to give you 3 honorable mentions and 1 favorite, and it's mostly the Rod show for me today, okay? Not entirely, but mostly. Rod says, I dig it all, man. Doo-wop, boogie-woogie, rockabilly, country western, gospel, honky-tonk, big band, bebop, swing, jazz, folk, soul, you name it, I can dig it. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can. All right. Another one that I love from Rod. Let me tell you what it's like to manage a rock band. We're driving all over hell and creation, city to city, roadies and crew, the whole 9. And not one person, not one, ever asks how we're always stocked up on gas. It's true. He's speaking for a lot of people here. Okay. I have one more honorable mention from somebody who's not Rod. How about that? It's from Nikki, actually. You care what he thinks, and that makes you a little less you. It's an interesting quote, and one that I actually was pondering a little bit. Um, I think there's an idea that is it possible to be authentic when you're looking for any reaction? Like any one person or any group of people, is it still possible to be authentically you? Okay, my favorite quote of the episode. Rod says, I have a lot of responsibilities, but being honest ain't one of them. Well said. And the delivery of it, folks, it's so good. I just adore this character. Okay. So questions for the audience. Hey, a question for you. This is really just one question. Tell me what your read is on Nikki. For Nikki, what is baseline Nikki? What is grieving Nikki or depressed Nikki? What is Nikki with the coping mechanism? What's his base state and where are the differences? Where are the outliers? Do we ever see what Nikki would normally look like? Ever? At all so far in this show? Um, I just find him really interesting. I I think there's multiple ways to see Nikki, and I have, I think, a generous view of him, and I'm happy to hold to that for now. And I think I've been trying to make a case for how that still holds up in this episode. But I can appreciate that not everybody's going to see Nikki in the same way. And so I want to get a sense from you, like, who do you think Nikki really is? What's in character and what's out of character for him? Because there's been, we meet him in grief, but pretty far into it. Then he comes here, he's a fish out of water and starts taking drugs. At what point is he like baseline Nikki, if ever? And yeah, what's your read on him? That's my question, and it's a big one for this episode because so much of what's happening in the story is about this dynamic that Daisy has with Nikki, either because of the actual dynamic between them or because of how that affects everybody else. So that's it. That's episode 8. And I'm really excited to have 2 more episodes to cover here. We've got episode 9 coming up next week. Looking forward to hearing from all of you and getting your thoughts as we really ramp up towards the end here. So, in the meantime, everybody, go out there. Don't be the muse, be the somebody.